All right, so now we're going to move on to our 17th quiz this year. And in this quiz, we were supposed to be finding solutions using the graphing calculator or using a graph. I tried to make sure that the numbers were awkward, so you would actually have to make use of the graphing calculator. So now in this first quiz, I actually gave you the equations in slope-intercept form, and then I asked you for the equations in slope-intercept form, which was a weird question. But the reason that I did that was to warm you up, because later on you'll have to give the equations in slope-intercept form. You'll have to find them on your own. All right, and I also wanted to see what you were typing into the calculator. So in this case, we already have it in the form we want, so we can go ahead and press y equals, and I'm actually already there. And then we type exactly what we see. We have 3, and our x is over here. So 3x minus 4. So I just typed the first equation. And I would press graph, but I actually want to see a second graph, so I'm going to press down so I can type the second graph. If I have a fraction, I put it in parentheses. So we have 1 over, and over is just my divide by sign, 2. And again, we have x here, plus 3. So now that I have both equations typed into the calculator, I go ahead and press graph, and the calculator is graphing both lines. So now the point at which both of those lines meet is called the solution, or is the solution of our equation. So now we can, in order to figure out what that point is, we go to second calc, which is trace, so second trace. And then we want to find the intersection, so we can either scroll down to 5 or just press 5. So scroll down to 5 and press enter. When it says first curve, go ahead and press enter. Then it goes to the second curve, just go ahead and press enter. When it says guess, you don't have to do this because there's just one intersection point, but it's a good habit to go to the point or as close to the point as you can get. And my calculator is being really slow. And then you just go ahead, you'd go closer on your calculator, but I'm just going to go there and press enter. It jumps to that point and it tells you the solution. And so solving this equation, solving the systems, x is 2.8 and y is 4.4. Now in the second question, I isolated one for you. I gave you one in slope-intercept form, and the second one I wanted you to do on your own. I wanted you to put that in slope-intercept form. So you would go ahead and you would subtract 2x from both sides. So you have 3y is negative 2x plus 9. Now you can divide everything by 3 so you can get the y alone. So you have here y is negative 2/3 x plus 3. All right, so again, so this is the major reason I wanted you to show me what you're typing into your calculator, because let's say you got the answer wrong. I wanted to see if you were plugging in the right equations. So let's go ahead and clear our calculators, put our new equations in, and look for the point of intersection. So now that you know how to do it, I'm going to do it a little bit quicker. We have here x plus 1, and our second equation is negative, and remember to use this as your negative sign. This is negative, this is minus. And if you mix them up, you will get an error. So negative 2/3 x plus 3. Make sure you check over your equation. Then you graph it. Graphs both lines for you. First the first one, then the second one. Notice one has a positive slope and one has a negative slope. Then you go to second, trace, intersect, first curve, enter, second curve, enter, guess. You would scroll to the point, but I'm just going to press enter. And it goes to the point, and our x solution is 1.2, and our y solution is 2.2. Now this one, you had to isolate both of the y's. So you had to go ahead and isolate this y, you got this, and then you had to isolate the next y, which was easier to do. I just took x from both sides, so I did minus x here to get that equation. And then we're going to type both equations in once we've isolated the y in both cases. First, go ahead and clear the ones you already have in there. So the first one is 2x minus, and notice I used the minus sign because I'm subtracting 1/2. I put my fraction in parentheses, and I go down, type the other one in. Now negative, not minus, but negative x plus 5. I graph them both. And once the lines are drawn, I press second, trace, intersect, which is number 5. First curve, enter, second curve, enter, guess, scroll to the point and press enter. Now notice that you have a kind of messy number. Never round to the nearest whole number. If you were going to round to the nearest whole number, you might as well have drawn this graph by hand without graph paper. The reason for the calculator is that you can get as precise or as accurate an answer as possible. So here our x value is approximately 1.833. And our y value is approximately 3.167. All right, and that's how you do it. Now moving on to quiz 18. We're going to do the same thing or get to the same goal, but we're going to do it in a different way. We're going to do elimination. So I'm going to go ahead and close the calculator now. We don't need it anymore. All right. So now we're looking at systems, solving systems of equations using elimination. And the point of elimination, right now we have 2 variables and 2 unknowns, and we want to get rid of one of those variables. So we can actually add or subtract equations to each other or from each other so that we can get rid of one of our variables. So since the coefficients here are the same, you have 1x and 1x here. If you subtract 1x from 1x, you get no x's. You would actually eliminate the x's. So that's what we want to go ahead and do. So I'm going to take the equation and subtract one equation from the other. I chose to subtract the top equation from the bottom, but I could have done it either way. I chose to subtract the top one because I wanted a positive 3y when I subtracted the y's. So x minus x is nothing. It's gone. It's eliminated. 7y minus 4y is 3y, and negative 12 minus negative 3, so we're actually doing negative 12 plus 3 is negative 9. Then we go ahead, we isolate the y, and we get that y is equal to negative 3. But the question is only half solved there, and you have to keep going. So now that we know the value of y, we can take that value of y. We can choose either equation, whichever one you prefer. Take that value of y and substitute it into that equation. So I chose the first equation. X plus 4y equals negative 3. I chose that one. So I'm going to take that y value and I'm going to substitute it in for y. And I have x plus 4 times negative 3 is negative 3, and then I can go ahead and solve it. And I get that x is equal to 9. Okay. Now, this one looks slightly harder, but it's actually really similar. But in this case, we have different coefficients on our x, and we have the same coefficients on our y's. So it's easier to eliminate y in this case, where in the other one it was easier to eliminate x. So, is that right? Yes, that is right. Okay, so it's definitely easier to eliminate y here. All right. So I'm going to take the y's and I'm going to, since they're the same sign, I have to subtract them from each other to eliminate them. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract the second equation from the first. And again, you could have subtracted the top equation from the bottom. It doesn't matter. So I have here 2x minus x gives us 1x. Negative y minus negative y. The y's are eliminated, which was the whole point. And 17 minus 10 gives us 7. So we get right away that our x value is equal to 7. From there, you pick whichever equation you would prefer to work with, and I prefer simple things, so I use this one. X minus y is 10. So there we have it over here. And since we just figured out that x is 7, we can substitute it in for x. So 7 minus y is 10. And when we isolate our y, we get that y is equal to a negative 3. All right, So there we have it, and that's how you do elimination. There is actually one or a couple more elimination questions here, and they get slightly harder. So here we have two different coefficients. It's much harder to get rid of the x than it is to get rid of the y. But our y's have different signs. So if we were to try and subtract them from each other, you wouldn't actually eliminate anything because the signs are different. But if you add them, they're opposite signs, you add opposite signs, then you eliminate. So we have to actually add in this case. Okay, so going ahead and adding it, we have 8x plus negative 7x, and that gives us 1x. Adding these, as you know, eliminates the y, and adding these gives you negative 1. So right away we get that x is equal to negative 1. Once we have our x value, we substitute into either equation, whichever one you prefer. I chose the top one, and I plugged in negative 1. So negative 7 times negative 1 minus y is 13, and you can go ahead, isolate the y, and you get that y is equal to negative 6. Okay, finally, number 4 was the hardest one, and also there was a typo, so please make sure. Here you should have 43 and not, 46. You should have 46 and not 43. All right, so as you can see here, our coefficients are not the same here, and they're not the same over here. When you see a question like this and you have to do elimination, or you want to do elimination, you try to make a choice that will make your life as easy as possible. What is the easiest way to get both equations to have something with the same coefficient? And I decided that instead of multiplying this by 5 and multiplying this by 6 and doing all kinds of crazy stuff, I could go ahead and multiply the whole thing by 2 and eliminate the y. It's much easier to eliminate the y by multiplying this by 2. So once you multiply this by 2, this bottom equation then becomes 10x plus 4y is equal to negative 34. I just multiplied each and everything here by 2. All right, now we have a 4y here, and of course there was a 4y originally, and they are of the same sign, so in order to eliminate them, we have to subtract one equation from the other. So 10x minus negative 6x should give you 16x. 4y minus 4y eliminates the y, and negative 34 minus 46 should give you negative, I seem to have dropped a negative sign here, should give you negative 80. Or maybe it didn't print, who knows. Anyway, once you isolate the x, you should get negative 5. And then we can go ahead and take negative 5, plug back into either equation, and you have your y value once you simplify it. All right. Now there is one more way in order to figure out in order to find x and y in a system of equations. And that final way is substitution. So we've learned elimination, we've learned graphing, and now we're going to do substitution. All right, so when you're going to do substitution, what I want you to think of is taking a value or taking an expression and literally substituting it into the other equation. So the first one is slightly easier than the others. So let's look at how to do the first one. All right, so here we have y equals x minus 1. So in this equation, we have an x and a y. In this equation, we also have an x and a y. We can take that expression for y, which is x minus 1, and we can substitute it for that y. That way, this top equation will no longer have a y. So as you can see below here, we have now 2x minus 3. It used to be y. It's no longer y. It's now x minus 1. That's just another name for y. It's like a nickname, really. All right, so now we've replaced the y with x minus 1 equals negative 1. Now the beauty of what just happened is we no longer have a y in this equation. It's just x's. So we can go ahead and solve this with our x's. Now we see here that we can use the distributive property. So here 3x negative 3 times x gives you minus 3x. Negative 3 times negative 1, it gives you plus 3. So then we can join our like terms and we get negative x here. Plus 3 is negative 1, and we can isolate the x, and we get that x is 4. And magically, I somehow have y is 3. How did I get that? Well, I went back up here. I chose the easier equation to work with, which was this one. And we know that y is equal to x minus 4. We found that x is 4. Sorry, y is equal to x minus 1. We found that x is 4, so I plugged in 4 here. 4 minus 1 is 3, so y is equal to 4 minus 1, which is 3. And that's how I got that 3. All right, we could use another method to check our work, but we're just going to go through. All right, a lot of people found this one challenging when we did it initially, and it was actually meant to not be challenging, but it was unfamiliar at the time. So here we have y is 4x plus 4. We also have that y is negative 5x minus 21. You may remember the transitive property. If y is 4x plus 4 and y is also this, that means 4x plus 4 is this. So it's kind of cool that now you have the transitive property in your head from an earlier quiz. And that's what we're really using. So 4x plus 4 is negative 5x minus 21. 4x plus 4 is negative 5x minus 21. So just remember, it's because y is this, y is also this. That means this has to be the same as this. I hope that makes sense. All right, from there, you want to get all the x's over to one side of the equation and all the numbers that are by themselves, all the constants, over to the other side of the equation. So we can go ahead, add 5 to both sides, subtract 6 from both sides. So we're just trying to isolate x. We do that successfully. We get x is negative 3. We can take that negative 3 and we can plug into either of these equations. Of course, we like working with positive numbers, most of us. So we pick the first one, or I picked the first one. I substitute a negative 3 here, and here's my work, and I get that y is equal to negative 6. All right, and here we have a couple more substitution questions. So in order to do questions like this, we first need to isolate the y. So in the earlier questions, y was isolated already. Here, y was isolated already, but down here, y is not yet isolated. So that's kind of the first goal. So I isolated y over here on this side. I just went ahead and I pulled the y over to here and moved the 4 over to here. So again, I moved the y over to here. I move the 4 over to here. Both of them change signs. I got y is 2x minus 4. Now I can take this, and in this equation where I have my y here, I'm going to replace it with 2x minus 4. I'm doing a substitution. Think of it like sports. You know, one athlete gets tired, you substitute it for an athlete of the same position. So you can think of 2x minus 4. He's doing the same job as y. So 5 times y, which is also just 2x minus 4, minus 3x is equal to 1. So that's this equation, but with the new version of y substituted. All right, and then we can go ahead and do distributive property. We get 10x minus 20 is minus 3x is 1. Join our like terms. 10x minus 3x gives us 7x. And simplify, we get x is equal to 3. From there, we use whichever equation, either of the given ones or the one we figured out. Whichever one is easiest, we take that x value and we substitute it in to figure out what y is. I chose to use this equation because it looks like the easiest one to work with. So we know that y is equal to 2x minus 4. We just found out that x is 3. So y is equal to 2 times 3 minus 4. 6 minus 4 gives us 2. That is our value of y. Okay, so here we have another question. It looks like an elimination question. You could actually use elimination, but this was a substitution quiz. So we had to use substitution here. So I went ahead and I isolated y in the top equation. Did I? No, I'm lying to you. I totally isolated x in the top equation. I could have done either one. I chose to isolate the x. I did that by taking 2y away from both sides. So I got 2x is equal to 4 minus 2y. And then I went ahead and divided everything by 2. So divided that by 2, divided that by 2, divided that by 2, and I got x is equal to 2 minus y. Once I got that, then I did my substitution. I took 2 minus y, and in place of x, I dropped it here. So now instead of x, I have 2 minus y, so 3 times 2 minus y, which is really x, minus 3y is equal to 18. I did my distributive property, simplified, and I got that y is negative 2. Once I figured out that y was negative 2, I selected the easiest equation to work with, which was this one that I figured out earlier. And I substituted my y in as negative 2. So x is equal to 2 minus negative 2. And I got that x is equal to 4. And that's how you do substitution. All right, so I'm going to wrap this video up as we move on to linear inequalities.